Welcome in, everybody, to another week of UFL Weekly. I am Kyle Krajewski, joined by, I call him this every week, Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Beautiful, Zach Cole. Zach, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. It is it's pretty cold and miserable here up in the Northeast, where Kyle and I are located. It's actually in the 40s right now, but I kind of
Nice.
got I got a fever. I got summer fever going right now, and I'm ready for the summer weather, but not until we wrap up some spring football. And it feels like we're winding down. And week 8 was a great example of some of the things that are coming ahead in the week 9, 10, and playoffs. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, week 8 kind of established some things, reiterated a lot, and kind of laid some groundwork for what we're going to be seeing these next 2 weeks and into the playoffs. Um, Big news, though, is that the conference championship matchups are set. We have the XFL championship game between the Battlehawks and the Defenders, and the USFL conference between the Panthers and Stallions. Uh, Unknown still who the 1 and the 2 seed are. However, both of these games are going to be played. Like we know where these games are going to be played. The Battlehawks and Defenders game will be played in St. Louis. Uh, the Battlehawks home stadium, regardless of if DC is the conference leader, and same for the Panther Stallions. It will be played in Birmingham, even if Michigan is the conference leader. We were talking briefly on this before the meeting or before we hopped in to record. Basically, these are set already because of schedule conflicts with the home stadiums of Detroit, Michigan, and DC with Audi Field. So a little, these teams are feeling a little gypped. Certainly, I think specifically, uh, Mike Nolan of the Panthers was fighting for these games to be played in at least in Arlington, so it would be they don't have to travel
Neutral,
and they can
right?
stay put in their hub. Um, but Nolan even said he's like there's still an incentive to win this conference or like lead this conference into this. He specifically stated they get coin toss and all that fun stuff, but he also said they get to bring their interns out. I guess interns don't get to fly out or travel with the team for away games, so I thought that was an
Hmm.
interesting little tidbit found in the post game notes. But Zach, I want your thoughts on both the conference matchups. I think this is kind of what we expected a few weeks now,
Yeah.
but also where they'll be played.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially when you feel like you've kind of earned home field advantage. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, with this being spring football, with it still being kind of a building block of what it's become, we're not really fully solidified yet as a known year by year entity that they're going to get the short end of the stick sometimes, and that kind of just feels like what this is. But one important point I do want to point out, Kyle, is that in week 9, the Stallions and the Panthers this upcoming week actually play each other.
Yep.
And in week 10, the Battlehawks and the Defenders play each other, which is really kind of interesting game plan wise, all that good stuff. But we'll boil down that more as we get into our previews for this week and for next week. Just something to keep an eye on as we start thinking through our picks, start talking about the game lines, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think we had the same thing last year where a
Yeah.
conference
Hmm.
championship game was played also the week before. And I think I think the matchup was already set, so it was like, oh, what are we going to see? Still see some good
Yep.
spring football.
Definitely. Definitely.
Recapping week 8 and what we saw game of the week between the 1 and 6 teams. The Memphis Showboats beat the San Antonio Brahmas 24-22 in overtime. What
Boats,
better
baby,
outcome
boats.
could you want out of a 1 and 6 matchup? Uh, I think the worst would have been if it were OT in like a 6-3 game, but we got points, we got OT, we had a game. Uh, the St. Louis Battlehawks then hosted the Birmingham Stallions and beat them by 1. They beat them 29-28, and it was I remember when we were going over this with picks last week. This game was a pick 'em. Vegas had this like this could be a toss up, and sure enough, it came down to a true toss up. Battlehawks won by 1. The Michigan Panthers then went on to beat the Houston Roughnecks 30-18. The shock of this game was that Bryce Perkins was like a surprise scratch that wasn't even noted until the game had started. Danny Etling stepped in healthily to start, and then everybody was like, "Wait a minute, where's MV Perkins?" But Perkins he missed a practice the previous week, heading into that game, and dealing with an ankle issue, and is again, we'll mention it later, but he's again out this week. So hopefully Perkins gets healthy, and I think they're just kind of resting and hoping he's good for playoffs. And then the DC Defenders beat the Arlington Renegades in a game that the Renegades needed to win to stay in playoff hopes. But DC beat them 33-30. It came down to the final seconds. Luis Perez went a little off script and tried a fake spike, which turned into an interception, kind of sealing the fate of DC winning that game. But that was a fantastic close one. I think every Renegades Defenders game is always fantastic, going back even just the past few years in every iteration. So, fantastic week of football last week. We get more coming in up this week.
Yeah, we absolutely do, Kyle. And I'm going to jump in and start us off with our weekly previews here. With our first game on Friday night, it is an 8 p.m. game. It is St. Louis Battlehawks at the San Antonio Brahmas, but the game is in St. Louis. So, again, another one of those kind of weird little schedule quirks that we have here. So, the Battlehawks are currently sitting at 7-2. The Brahmas are 1-7. Unsurprisingly, St. Louis is favored in this game by almost a touchdown, 6.5 points, and the over-under is currently at 42.5. You might remember back in week 2, these two teams faced off, both coming from the UFL division, so they do see each other twice. I'm sorry, the XFL division. They do see each other twice a year. The Battlehawks won that first game 26-9. St. Louis is coming off sort of a tight victory in week 8, and they're still just looking for this offense to click. And I think that moving forward, they're going to continue putting that offense out there despite already having locked up a spot in the conference championship game. So I would expect to continue to see Max Duggan, Sailors, Butler, Jennings, the whole 9 yards. Jacob Sailors was great in week 8 against the Birmingham Stallions, punching in a touchdown, which was the go-ahead touchdown, had 118 yards on the ground. He was awesome, earning him the Offensive Player of the Week. Defensive Player of the Week also came from the Battlehawks in that game, and it was edge Travis Feeney, who had a game-winning fumble, forced fumble at the end of the game, which was fantastic. San Antonio on the other side of this game, however, is not doing too hot this season, but they did manage to put up some points in this game at least, which is something that they've been struggling to do prior. And a lot of that was thanks in part to Deshaun Corbin, who had an incredible game. 25 carries, 145 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns with 38 more yards through the air and on 5 receptions. So that caught Peyton Pardee's eye. Clearly, he commented he wanted to lean on the run game more, and the offensive line has really kind of stepped up. The one wrinkle that we might see for San Antonio is that Kellen Mond is going to be stepping in. Kyle, you mentioned pre-show here that we're a day late on our recording this week, so apologies for that.
Yes,
but
apologies.
the good news is that we do have some clarity on the starting lineups and some quarterback situations. So we're going to see Kellen Mond for the Brahmas here in week 9. So we have the San Antonio Brahmas taking on the Battlehawks, and it is Kellen Mond on one side, Max Duggan and the gang on the other side. Once again, in St. Louis, they are 6.5 point favorites. Kyle, go ahead, give me your takes.
We talked about this last week, and it seems to have come true. The Brahmas can't seem to score consistently. Mm-hmm. Week 1 and 2, it was 9 points, and then 23 and 24, week 3 and 4, and then 3, 5 and 6, and then week 7 and 8, 24, 22. I think we're bound to see a 6.
You know what's coming.
I think we're going to see a 6. We're going to get the single-digit 6 for week 9, and then we'll probably see 6 again next week. Not to say that's the way I'm picking, but I do think St. Louis leans much favorably in this game and wins by this 6.5 plus. So I'm taking St. Louis minus 6.5.
Love it.
I don't think St. Louis is going to take too much metal off the pedal, or too.
I think you're right. they're going to keep the
They're
pedal
not
to
going to
the
lay
metal.
off, is what I'm saying. Uh, so I think St. Louis is going to come away with the handedly win. So St. Louis -6.5. Give me the over though. I think we're seeing points galore in all of these games. Every game this week is over a 40-point over under, and I think rightfully so. So I'm taking St. Louis -6.5 over 42.
Nice. I'm going to rock with you on St. Louis -6.5, primarily because you convinced me on the point. What's the word I'm looking for? The point
The
flow
point
that we seem to see.
consistency
Yeah, that we seem to see
pattern.
from the Brahmas. I think we might see another clunker from them in this game. I mentioned at the top of the recap here that they lost 26-9. You do the quick math on that. That's a 35-point total in that game. So I'm going to go under 42.5 in this
Ooh.
game. Just based off of their consistency, like you said, they can't seem to be able to string together these high-scoring games. So two in a row is making me a little weary. And even if they do put up more points than they did in week 2 when they played the Battlehawks the first time, I still think maybe it's 14, 13, 14 at most. So I like the under in this one.
All right. Second game of the weekend, Saturday at noon. By the way, I looked into it. Why St. Louis, or why the game between the Battlehawks and Brahmas is in St. Louis and not San Antonio. The Alamo Dome is hosting graduations this weekend. So
Very nice.
a little bit of scheduling conflict there.
Congratulations to everyone graduating in the Alamo Dome.
Happy for you. Second game of the weekend, Arlington Renegades heading to Memphis to face the Showboats. Saturday at noon Eastern time. Renegades 3-5, Showboats 2-6. Arlington is favored -5.5, and over under set at 41.5. Arlington, I think there was a little bit of thought going into this game if Stoops was going to bench Perez and roll with a backup, as these games are a little bit I don't want to say meaningless, but they're not going into playoffs. But Stoops rolling with Luis Perez. He didn't bench him last year in meaningless games when they were out of playoff contention. But I'm expecting these two teams to duke it out with nothing on the line for either of them. Just some pride and good old spring football.
Sure.
Memphis, we got EJ Perry again starting for the week after Troy Williams started last week. Seems like Memphis is just going to start going with this quarterback this week, this guy next week. I think last week we were curious if we were going to see a rotation, but last week it was 100% Troy Williams. So I think this week we're going to see 100% EJ Perry. Whether they are just getting these guys game tape or just seeing what they've got for the next year. These teams, or Memphis is specifically like, let's try this out. So we'll see EJ Perry out there rocking out the ball to our boy Jonathan Adams. So with that being said, Arlington favored by -5.5. Over under set to 41.5. Zach, how you going here? How you going here?
I think I'm gonna roll with Memphis in this one. Boats, baby, boats.
Boats, baby, boats.
I don't know. They seem to be putting together some decent performances in the last couple weeks, and I think that 5.5 points is very generous to an Arlington team that I'm not sure is as consistent as that spread is making them seem to be. So I'm going to take Memphis plus 5.5. I don't necessarily know that they win this game, but I do think that there is a chance that they keep it nice and tight, like they did, much similar to how they did with San Antonio last week. And as for the over under in this game, 41.5. I think I'll go over for probably the reason that you said in the last one, Kyle, in our last
Yeah.
preview. There's just been a lot of points lately, and the league often seems to be ticking positively and in an upward fashion. So I think that over 41.5, that's just 21 points each. I think that that's doable for these two
Yeah.
squads. So I'm going to go ahead and take the over.
I am unfortunately going to go with both of your picks. I think Memphis. I think Memphis comes away with something in this one. Um, I believe Memphis is. I hate to say the better team, but I think Arlington, we've seen previously, struggles to score unless it is the DC
Mm.
defenders. So I think Memphis is going to come away with a little bit of a closer game on them here. And I think we're going to see points, whether all those points are Memphis or if Arlington keeps everybody down. But I think, I think Memphis comes away with a little bit of a close game or a win. And I think we're going to see points because I think we're just going to see points galore, hopefully, coming from all these teams this week.
It's kind of weird to say for a Memphis team that hasn't really been particularly successful in the last couple of weeks. Their last win prior to this past week was week 5, but it feels like they're trending in the right direction somehow.
Every
Even
week they
being,
seem to be like a little bit better, just a little too late.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I like their stock. I think it's trending upwards right now.
Bye, bye,
All that's
bye.
to say, moving on to our third game is kind of I would say our crown jewel of the weekend. Kyle, would you say so?
Yeah, I think this is the game to watch of the weekend.
I think so. I think it's got the most interesting storylines in it too, because as we alluded to in the pregame show, it is the Michigan Panthers against the Birmingham Stallions in Birmingham. It is Saturday at 3 p.m. And this is a preview of the conference championship, the USFL conference championship game that will be played in 3 weeks from now. So Michigan and Birmingham have already played each other once, but that was all the way back in week 2. And the Stallions came out on top in that game, 21-12. That was back when we thought that we were just getting the same old Stallions as we
Yep.
had gotten in 2024. So we were a little unsure of what the Panthers were at that point too, but we clearly see now that Michigan's for real. They're sitting at 6-2, but they're going to have to play this game again without their starting quarterback Bryce Perkins. But we clearly saw Danny Etling step up to the plate and deliver when he was called upon. I think healthy, he's a pretty decent quarterback, so that's not really a concern of mine with him being in there. Excuse me, but it is clearly their intention to try to get Bryce Perkins healthy for the playoff run that they're
Yeah.
hopefully going to go on. Head coach Mike Nolan did comment and say that they do want to win this game to try to win the home field advantage, despite
Yep.
the fact that they're going to be playing back at Birmingham again in 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now when conference championship week rolls around. So that is definitely something to look out for. And you have to think that they want to kind of get the revenge for the week 2 loss to the Stallions the first time around. So
Yeah.
we will see what happens on the Michigan side. On the Birmingham side, however, Deion Kane popped off in
Ooh. Yeah,
week
he
8
did.
here. He had 2 catches for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was doing
Classic.
his best Hakeem Butler impersonation there. His Hakeem Butler doing a Randy Moss
Yep.
impersonation.
He's impersonating a guy impersonating another guy.
Yeah, yeah. So we saw a huge line from him, and that took him
Yep.
actually all the way up to first in the league in receiving yards. He was sitting at 4th prior to that. And under center, we're going to see Jamar Smith for the Birmingham Stallions. He was pretty good last week, throwing for 262 yards, 3 touchdowns with an interception. The other key thing to this, though, is Ricky Person is out for Birmingham.
Yeah.
They have some CJ Maribel is another pretty capable runner for them in the backfield. So they have some other options, but that's definitely something to kind of keep an eye on. So Birmingham, Michigan, round 2 of 3. We're going to see it again,
We are.
but this adds a little kind of tricky spin to this whole game line thing here, Kyle. Michigan is favored despite being the away team by 2.5 points. The over under is at 43.5. Give me your thoughts.
I think I got to go Michigan minus 2.5. I think last week it almost looked like that team didn't downgrade with Etling in at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with the week kind of preparing for Etling gives them a little bit more buffer zone here. That's not to say Jamar Smith on Birmingham is still a very capable and very solid quarterback
Mm-hmm.
for them. I just think Etling and this Michigan team, I think Michigan's the better team. I think Etling keeps them there, but with Bryce Perkins, it's like they are best in the league, I think. So I'm taking Michigan minus 2.5. Give me the points. I'm a little teaser. I think I'm going to take over on all of these games. I'm just loving the points we're seeing. We've seen the past few weeks. It's like a point explosion, and I don't know why that wouldn't start, or I don't know why that would start to slow down this week, unless we start seeing a lot more rotation of like backup guys
Mm-hmm.
kind of get more playing time. But even then, I think we're just going to see points. So Michigan minus 2.5. over 43.5.
Yeah, my picks aren't going to be exciting here, Kyle. I'm tailing you on both of these. I
All
like
right.
Michigan. I think that they are rolling right now, and they are a little more hot than the Stallions, who are kind of reeling from a week 8 loss to the Battlehawks. So I think Michigan should be favored, and I think that they're going to cover the spread at -2.5 here. And I will also go ahead and take the over 43.5. I'm expecting some big points, as we've seen the Panthers seem to score, whether it's Perkins, whether it's Etling, it doesn't really matter. So go ahead, give me the over, give me the Panthers -2.5. I'm telling you.
Let's ride. Final game of the week, our lone Sunday game. DC Defenders take on the Houston Roughnecks in Houston. Game is at 4 p.m. on Sunday. Defenders are 6-2, looking to kind of lock down home team first seed in the XFL conference, while the Roughnecks are out and just playing some damn good football. They're sitting at 3-5. The Defenders are favored here at -3.5. Over under set to 45.5. I believe that is our highest point on the week. Uh, DC, just based on coach speak, not expecting too much in terms of resting guys, but likely we see some rotation as the game kind of goes, based on some Shannon Harris comments. They're getting all their. I think they're going to start with all their starters, and based on how this game kind of flows, is when they'll kind of make decisions on resting and taking out some of these starters. But realistically, I think we can expect a full game of Teamu unless this game gets out of control. Um, Temper expectations on a big Teamo game, though, passing wise. I think this is a game they sort of run a little bit, keep it on their own time.
Mhm.
Deion Jackson last week broke a 57-yard touchdown. They have him and Abram Smith, who's a fantastic 1-2 punch. So I think they're going to kind of roll with that this week to keep things a little slow and keep it on their terms. Houston, on the other hand, continues to be the Jalen McClendon show. I think he's making a name for himself both in this league and just as a professional prospect. Last week he threw for 316, 2 touchdowns and an interception. I think we see similar numbers this week. Justin Hall, his number one guy, had 11 receptions last week for 88 yards and a touchdown. Justin Hall is just a reception machine in this game, in this offense,
That's
with
crazy.
McClendon there. Uh, so I think we can kind of expect some passing there. So while I said DC is going to kind of keep this under their own terms, I think McClendon and Houston are going to be like, sure, slow it down. We're just going to blow up and try to score in your face. And that's why I think this over-under set at 45.5. So with game picks, I'll kick it off because Zach's a little bit you can't see it, you the watcher or the listener, but Zach's got network disruption here. But I see his beautiful face now. He's back. Uh,
Sorry
Game
about that.
picks: DC -3.5, over under 45.5. I'll kick us off here, Zach. So you get some
Okay.
your network settled down. Keep it in line, please. DC -3.5. I think I'm gonna roll DC -3.5. I'm gonna stick with the away team, the favorite here. But I think we see 45 is so high. I think we see an under. Yeah, I think DC is going to really try to slow this game down. And while they're successful or not is to be seen. But I think that's a game plan that they're going to try to roll with in this one. So I'm going to take the under, whether they keep it low scoring on their side or if Houston struggles to score on this DC defense. Yeah, I'm going to take DC -3.5, under 45.
See, Kyle, that's where you're wrong.
Oh,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm going to take Houston +3.5. DC has a real knack of letting these sub 500 teams kind of hang around with
Yeah,
them. If you remember a week or two ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they let San Antonio hang around with them.
they
San
always
Antonio was
let them.
leading that game.
Yeah.
They let Arlington twice this season hang around with them. So I'm going to say that they're going to let Houston hang around. And they're going to sleep on Jalen McClendon, I think. That dude is a dog. I love me some Jalen
Me
McClendon.
too.
And clearly so does Justin Hall. I didn't get a chance to hop in there, but 11 catches was nuts. And I think it's going to be an over. I really do. And in
Give it to
all of
me.
those games where we saw them play the Brahmas, where we saw them play the Renegades twice, it was 50 some points. It was 60 some
Yeah.
points. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be high scoring. This Houston team can excuse me, put some points up. DC's also going to put points up. It's just going to be a matter, I think, of whether or not they roll over or they pull Teamu out or they just go run game heavy. I definitely think that's a valid argument there, Kyle. I could see some Abram Smith, some Deion Jackson just kind of keep it on the ground,
Yep.
survive, and just move on to another week, So I'll take the points, though. I think it could end up being a shootout, and I think Houston's going to hang around.
All right. This game is going to decide how our pick record goes this week, which I didn't get to brag. I
You
went
can
6-1
brag.
last week. Zach went a classic 4-3, and if you think there's a game missing, we pushed on DC -3. What a week!
Classic.
Wrapping up week 9 here, just for my DFS fellas out there. I'm talked about it. I'm liking this McClendon Hall stack. I think it's going to be really hard for me to stray away from that. If I do, it's going to be a little bit of a Duggan and maybe Hakeem Butler. I think Coach Becht kind of talked about wanting to open that up a little bit better. Also, likely have plenty of shares of both Corbin from San Antonio and Sailors evenly throughout my lineups. So,
Nice.
liking those guys there at running back. So, that's week 9. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. We're kind of going to be quick here, wrapping up. We both have places to be in these next few minutes. So we appreciate you. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know who you're rooting for this week and this week of many games that don't mean a lot. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. I said that already. But it's a pleasure. We love the UFL and we love that you like listening to us talk about the UFL.
We absolutely do.
So, thank you. Talk to you next week. It's been a pleasure. Let's have a fantastic week 9.
See ya.